So I wanted to put together a little build series here on both of these engines really, but I'm going to start with this iron block LQ4 here. So this is going to be somewhat of a budget rebuild. We're going to do it right. The block's going to go to machining. We're going to have a rotating assembly balanced, but we're still going to do that trying to reuse parts that we have and being a little bit mindful of the budget. So wanted to put together a little series to kind of document this one's build, and then we will also do that one in the background there when it's time for it. But we're going to start with this one. So I mentioned iron block LQ4. This came out of, I believe, an 03 1500 HD 6.0 gas truck. And I've already broken it down partially in the past. I've got the pistons and rods out, cam out, but the crank's still in it. So I want to get this one down to the bare block and that one in the background stripped down to the bare block. And that's going to be kind of the starting point to this process. But the engine's in pretty good shape. The bottom end bearings looked great on it. It does have the typical LS, cam bearing wear. We're going to get new cam bearings pressed in it as part of the machining. But the goal on this is to get, because this has Gen 3 internals, to get the Gen 4 crank and rod out of that 6.2 LS3 in the background, because that's getting a fully forged rotating assembly. But I'm going to use the Gen 4 crank and the Gen 4 rods in the 6-liter block, and then we'll end up buying a set of pistons, probably an inexpensive set of forged pistons, just depending on what bore diameter we end up with on this once we get it measured. And this will be kind of a hybrid Gen 3 iron block with Gen 4 internals and forged piston upgrade. So the first step is going to be getting this stripped to the bare block. All of this stuff's just loosely bolted on here for storage. So I'm going to get the heads out of the way, valley cover off, and we'll pull the crank out of the bottom. So while I'm time-lapsing the disassembly of this long block here, I wanted to kind of clarify the goals for this project. So if you were to go online and buy a rebuilt 6-liter short block, the most cost-effective option that I could find was from ATK, and it looks like that engine would run about $3,200 before any sort of shipping and before any sort of core charge. So that's kind of my baseline for this project. I want to put together a fully rebuilt engine done the right way, using better components, but come in at a lower price point than that ATK off-the-shelf short block. And the point of that is to show guys that if you're willing to do the work yourself, you can do this the right way without cutting major corners, but end up with an end combination that has better components in it that are going to better suit your goals. So I want to show guys that there is a medium that exists between that true low buck, kind of pull it apart, gap the pistons, copper spray the head gaskets, and put it back together, and buying that off-the-shelf, expensive, fully forged engine. If you take the time and do it right and be careful about your component selection, you can get something put together that's going to probably meet your needs a little bit better, in addition to, kind of giving you the satisfaction of being able to say that you've done it yourself. None of this is impossible to do. With a little bit of time and research, anybody can rebuild these LSs. It can be a lot of fun doing it, and being able to select your own parts and know exactly what bearing clearances you end up with and exactly how the engine went together can kind of give you some intrinsic value too. So I hope that you guys enjoy watching this series. I hope that it clarifies some stuff for you guys that think that it costs thousands to rebuild a motor or thousands to upgrade to forged internals. That's not always the case. These things can be done on somewhat of a budget. And I might get a little bit of kickback for calling this a low buck build. Obviously low buck in the truest sense of the term, like I mentioned, just pulling it apart, gapping the ring, spraying the head gasket, put it back together. Nothing wrong with that. Guys do it all the time. Just throw a turbo on it, make great power, have a lot of fun. I have nothing against that. But some guys do want to have something that is entirely fresh. They want a truly rebuilt engine, but they still have a budget. So that medium does exist, and that's what I'm trying to show in this series. So hopefully you guys enjoy it, and if you have any questions about anything along the way, give me a shout, shoot me a message or comment below, and we'll catch you at the end. See what you think. So you can see how much corrosion was down in those knock sensor bores. That's kind of a common problem on these early trucks. They get water intrusion in those bores because it gets underneath the intake manifold and settles down in that valley cover, which is why you'll see a lot of times when you do new knock sensors and knock sensor grommets, you'll see guys RTV them in. It looks like somebody had done that on this motor at some point, but maybe the water intrusion happened beforehand, but you can see all the corrosion there. Luckily, these knock sensors came out pretty easy. They weren't rusted in place, but they definitely were sitting in some water. So you can kind of see how good of shape this engine was in. I mean, looking at the main bearings here, they're all in really good shape. I mean, there's some minor grooving in some of them, just probably from some debris in the oil passing through them, but not even enough to really show copper. So the block side looks real good on all of those. Same with the main side. You know, the center thrust bearing, I can see one groove in it, but again, it's really not that bad. Somebody probably kept up on the maintenance of this engine. It's in pretty good shape overall. Same thing on the crank. Got it kind of wiped down. Everything looks really good on it. There's no deep grooves, no scratching. You know, this could take a light polish more than likely and be good to go. Couple doors down here in the industrial complex that my shop is at, I've got a guy that does crank work, and we've, you know, both been neighbors for quite a while. So he's going to throw this on his crank machine, just put a light polish on it, measure it for me. And even though we're not using this crank, it's in such nice shape, I'm going to put it in the shelf. You never know future projects when you might need something. So we'll keep a hold of this, and assuming that the Gen 4 crank and the aluminum block's good to go, that is. We'll hang on to this one as a spare. Yeah, I'm going to show you guys how I pull these crank sprockets off these LS cranks when they're out of the block. This is just like a separator bearing puller. It's a cheap unit from like Harbor Freight. I use it for doing pinion bearings and things like that, but it works great on these as well. And it's a lot easier to do it if the crank's out of the block, because trying to fixture this when it's in the block is difficult because there's limited space. You can do it, but I just find it easier to do it, you know, once it's on the ground if you're going to be pulling the crank. So I'll go ahead and get this fixtured up and show you how it works. First thing I do is spin down the crank bolt, because that'll give you something to press against with the puller. So I just run that down. You can get this set up underneath your sprocket. All right, once you're fixtured up there and everything's snug, you can go ahead and bump the top of it. I use an impact because it's a little bit easier than trying to hold the crank in place. We got that right there. We'll just give it a couple bumps here. There you go. It is loose now. You can pull your fixture off of here. Back that crank bolt out real quick. There you go. So I went ahead and got all the mains wiped down and snug back in place. I didn't torque them, I just kind of snugged them up with the Milwaukee impact. So to finish getting this ready to go down to the machine shop for cleaning and hopefully honing, I'm going to go ahead and pull out any of this miscellaneous hardware or any of these gallery plugs that are present on the block and get those out of the way. And then the last thing that I'm going to do before we send it off, just so that I've got my own baselines to double check, we're going to roll it back over, and I'm going to measure the bore diameters of each of these cylinders and make some notes to make sure that they're not egged out and they don't taper top to bottom or bottom to top. So we'll get the dial bore gauge in there and reference a few different locations and just make some notes. That'll also let me know if this is going to be a candidate for just a budget hone, or if it's going to need to be bored in order to correct cylinder squareness, or I should say roundness. So we'll get that knocked out, and this one will be ready to go. So I'm going to show you the tools I use for measuring cylinder bores to determine wear, out of round, and taper. So this is a dial bore gauge. I use Fowler. They're kind of a middle of the road brand. I've had good luck with them. They tend to have pretty good accuracy, but they're affordably priced. So it'll come in a set like this. It's got all of your extensions so you can measure various sizes. You'll use the same tool for measuring like bearing clearances on the cam bearings, main bearings, so on and so forth. But I use it as well for measuring cylinder bores. The other thing you'll need is a micrometer. You'll need it to have the range in which your cylinder bore falls within. So this LQ4 4-inch bore, we've got a 3 to 4 inch micrometer here. The first thing you're going to do is zero the dial bore gauge. So I've got the micrometer set at exactly 4 inches, and I went ahead and zeroed the dial bore gauge. I've got the appropriate extension in there. It is zeroed out. When this is compressed to 4 inches, the gauge is zeroed out. And then we could use that to measure the cylinder bores in 3 spots. So you're going to measure it up and down in 3 spots, top, center, bottom, or I'm sorry, bottom, center, top. And then you're going to flip it 90 degrees so that you're measuring this way. Same thing, bottom, center, top. And you'll record all of those measurements, and then you can do some mathematics to determine your taper and your cylinder out around. And that'll give you an idea how much wear is on the block and whether or not it's going to need to be overbored. Of course, your machine shop can do this as well. I just like to double check everything so that I've got my own measurements to compare against theirs, which theirs is going to be much more accurate. They've got better equipment, but I like to kind of know where I stand before it goes to machining. When you take these measurements, you want to have your main caps torqued. It will, believe it or not, torquing the main caps will make a difference. It can distort those cylinder bores, you know, a couple tenths of a thousandth of an inch, and it does affect the measurement some. So make sure those are all torqued to spec. And then ideally, if the machine shop is doing it, they can actually put a torque plate on to simulate cylinder head torque, which does the same thing. It kind of shifts those bores a little bit, and that's always a good idea too. So I'll shoot a quick clip kind of showing what the dial bore gauge looks like when it's in the bore and how you rock it to determine your actual measurement. And we'll take a look at that too. So how this works is you'll get your dial bore gauge in a cylinder. You'll get it positioned, you know, wherever you're measuring, whether it's the bottom of the bore, center, top of the bore. You're going to make sure that it's all squared up in there. And then you're going to rock that gauge. And you're going to find a spot where the needle changes directions as you rock it back and forth. See, this is changing directions right at the 2/1000ths mark, roughly. So that would be your measurement in this location. Then you come up to a second location, you do the same thing, rock that gauge. Carefully find where that needle changes direction. That's your measurement. So you write that down, and then at the end of that, you'll do all your math and determine cylinder roundness and taper. So the last thing I'm going to do on this block before I send it to machining is just smooth out the casting flash in the valley and behind the front timing cover. So when these blocks come out of the mold, the way that they're cast, they have kind of these jagged edges where the oil drains back into the pan. So I'm just going to get in there with a small die grinder and carefully smooth all that out so that there's not any of those edges left. And the purpose of that is, one, to prevent any of those pieces of slag from coming loose, which chances are they won't because this has, you know, been run for a long time. But it just prevents anything from coming loose that's hanging off of there. But more importantly, it gives a smoother radius for the oil that pools in this valley to drain back into the pan quicker. Drain back on the LS engines is kind of an area that can be improved on. And, you know, doing something like this is probably going to make marginal improvements, nothing significant, but any little thing helps. So I'll get in there with the die grinder, the extended flute, and smooth all that out real quick. All right, so I've got that casting flash cleaned up. I'll show you what it looks like now. You can see, didn't take much off, just smoothed the edges, knocked off any big burrs. Same with the window up front there. Not looking to remove any material, just smooth everything out. Also went and did a few little spots in the lifter valleys here. You see the shiny spots there. There was just some casting flash there. This is another spot where oil drains back. You can see it between the lifter bores there. I just smoothed a little bit of a ridge out. A couple little spots there around the lifter bores. Very minimal in there because you don't want to damage anything if the bit slips, but just smoothed a couple little spots out in there too. All right, so that wraps up the teardown and prep on this engine. I forgot to take some video when we loaded it up to go to the machine shop, so I'll throw a couple pictures up here of it loaded up. Once this gets back from machining, I'll pick up another episode on here to show you what we found at the machine shop, what we ended up selecting for the internals. So if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the page and keep an eye out for that update. We'll catch you guys on the next one.